The following podcast contains explicit language. You're listening to the Cinematography podcast presented by Hot Rod Cameras, a program about the art, craft, and philosophy of the moving image and the people who make it happen. Coming to you from the world headquarters of Hot Rod Cameras in Hollywood, California, are your hosts, Ben Rock and Ilya Friedman.
Hey, welcome back to another fine episode of the Cinematography podcast. My name is Ilya Friedman. This show is about the art, craft, and philosophy of the moving image. Typically, for the last 11 years, coming to you between myself and my co-host, Ben Rock, we talk about a wide variety of topical things. And then we have an interview with a featured guest. And then we talk about sort of our pet obsessions. It's sort of the formula we've used for every episode. Ben is not here today. So instead, I am joined by the composer of this show, Kays Alatracci. Kays has filled in a few times for me over the years while I've been gone. This is the first time he gets to fill in for Ben. Kays, welcome back to your co-hosting duties on the Cinematography podcast.
Thank you for having me back. This is very exciting to be with you for the first time. The how shall I say, less goofy host of the show.
I don't know. I get a little goofy,
and I say that with love, of course. I love Ben. I'm also excited to find out who's the interviewee for this show this time.
Yeah, our featured guest today is Jessica Lee Gagné. You might know her as the cinematographer for the TV show Severance, and we talk an awful lot about Severance Season 2. She has previously been on the show. We'll put a link to her previous appearance in the show notes over at Cam Noir. Severance Season 1 was another fantastic interview, and we get into Jessica Lee Gagné's backstory, and we get to find out, a little bit like, where all this obsession came from. This time, we really spend a lot of time talking about Severance Season 2, which, holy crap, we should. And she directs one of the most incredible episodes of the season, and we talk a lot about that as well. But before we get to the interview, we typically talk about our sort of topical, close focus, what's going on in the industry. There's a lot going on right now, including probably, the biggest story is Skydance and Paramount being in this will they, won't they merger for quite a while now. Sherry Redstone is looking at about an $8 billion deal, but now there's a new wrinkle. 60 Minutes. You know what? Here, before you can do a better job explaining the new wrinkle, but I mean, it gets into like, political interference and all kinds of interesting stuff. So Kays, tell me about the latest in the Skydance Paramount merger and what's going on with the Trump administration and all of these bits and pieces.
Okay, I'm going to try my best. So the first time that I became aware of the story was when just a few days ago, it was announced on 60 Minutes, a show that I've watched practically my entire life. I just love that show. And Bill Owens, who is the executive producer of the show, resigned. And at first I wasn't clear exactly what was going on. And then I read up about it, and I found out there's a lot more to the story than just, him not being, him wanting to retire. So here's the way I understand it. Sherry Redstone is the CEO of Paramount Plus, and for quite some time now, they have
Paramount
been talking
Studios.
about
the whole shebang.
Paramount Studios, the whole shebang, right? Not just the streaming, everything. A studio, which by the way, brought
Viacom, CBS, all of these properties, cable channels, everything. Yeah.
Yes. Absolutely. So she's been talking about like a merger, and after wheeling and dealing with several different studios that wanted to kind of possibly purchase them, but like kind of split them apart, there was like some fear that they were going to turn out the Paramount lot into like some sort of condos or something like that. Finally, Skydance came to the table with a legitimately good offer and a promise to keep Paramount whole and to basically uphold the legacy of this historical show, this historical studio. So far, so good, until this past election season where 60 Minutes ran interviews with both Trump and then candidate Kamala Harris. And as it's typically normal for them to do. The interview runs a little bit longer, and then they kind of edit it down to a more palatable, around like 20 minutes or so, to fit like the show segment. So they did that for both of the candidates, except when they did it for Kamala Harris, President Trump maintained that they had somehow manipulated some of the things that she said to make her sound better, and hence brought up a lawsuit against 60 Minutes and Paramount as the
election interference, which is like, it's a $20 billion lawsuit, which
yes, this is not something you can kind of like say, just pay it up.
Okay, but here. Yeah, so here's the thing, though. Most legal scholars say that this is frivolous beyond belief, because really, at the end of the day, the objection of this suit is that a long interview was made shorter. That's really what it's coming down to. So, of course, they could fight this, and they say there's a really good chance that they could win. But here's the thing. If they win, now that the Trump administration is in place, and which is known to be vindictive, they think that there's a good chance that the Trump administration would then block the merger, which would essentially cost Sherry Redstone about $8 billion. So,
yeah, I mean, because basically the FCC has to approve the merger. They have to approve, this is like a massive, massive deal, and the government has to approve the merger. So she's fearing that if she doesn't settle with Trump or something regarding this other pending case, that the FCC's, Trump is going to instruct the FCC not to approve the merger, and then they're going to be back to square one, and it's just going to be a whole mess. So it's one of those damned if you do, damned if you don't sort of scenarios.
Yeah. So there's some pressure to solve this lawsuit, and then the executive producer of 60 Minutes states, privately, but then basically 60 Minutes in their most recent episode goes out and in the last minute has sort of a statement about why their executive producer, abruptly retires, and says he no longer feels that there is integrity for the journalistic process at 60 Minutes, which then calls into question, anything that they're doing now. So either 60 Minutes gets backed, and 60 Minutes then, essentially blows up the deal for Paramount, or 60 Minutes, the crown jewel, the most respected news program, possibly of the last several decades, has all of its credibility put into question. So what is Sherry Redstone to do? It sounds like she's in a no-win situation.
It does sound like she's in a no-win situation. I mean, I would also mention that I think 60 Minutes is the highest rated show that news show as far as Paramount has. So obviously this is a big deal if all of a sudden 60 Minutes loses credibility with the public versus Sherry Redstone deciding to settle with the Trump administration and basically kind of work out a deal with them. I've asked myself, what would I do in that situation? Because on one hand, the integrity of 60 Minutes is important. As I said, this is a show that I watched my entire life, so I highly respect, and I do respect, the executive producer resigning. On the other hand, there are a lot of jobs on the line with the merger. So if the merger doesn't happen, all of a sudden Paramount ends up being in financial trouble once again, and a lot of jobs, possibly thousands of jobs, could be lost. So let me just say I don't envy Sherry Redstone's position right about now.
Yeah, and there might be a third way forward, but it hasn't been revealed to anyone as of yet. So all of this is just sort of like changing day by day. And, the vindictive nature of the Trump administration can't be understated. I mean, in the last 6 hours, it was announced that Amazon was going to start publishing the cost of the tariff next to products. But then in the last 45 minutes before recording this, Amazon made a statement saying, no, the Trump administration had some blowback about this. They didn't like the idea. They called it politically motivated to make the tariff price part of our transparency to the customer. So we're going to walk that back. That's going to go away now. So
that's absurd. That's like saying that sales tax are politically motivated.
Yeah, it's a brave new world that we're living in right now, and I don't think anyone knows exactly how it's gonna go next. Boy, I kind of feel like I could use some severance about now, because being able to separate my work life from the outer sort of like politically fueled sort of world that we experience every single day is got to be taking a toll. And with that, I think that it's probably about time that we get to the interview with Jessica Lee Gagné.
The Cinematography Podcast Interview.
I'm joined now by Jessica Lee Gagné, returning to the Cinematography Podcast after 3 years. We were last here talking about Severance when I hesitate to say it was not the cultural phenomenon that it's become, which is amazing. And congratulations on season 2 and directing and all the stuff. We're going to get into that, but welcome back to the show.
Thank you. No, it's cool to be back after that long break.
When we spoke last time, we talked, I gushed, uncontrollably for a little while about all of the catnip that you sneak into this series, like season 1 in particular, of trick shots and oneers and all kinds of just fun things. You guys up it in season 2, and you up it in, I would say, some unexpected ways. First of all, the first shot of the first season is this incredible hallway tracking shot, which I think there's a lot that's been talked about it, so we're not going to dive too far deep down into it, but there are so many other fun things, and God, I got to say, I feel like the whole series also got darker. I feel like everything just kind of came down a notch too. And I went back and I looked at Sweet Virginia, and I know that is there is some film noir aesthetic that is deep to you. And now that you get the ability to move out into the world and have this bigger, broader world of season 2 of Severance, talk a little bit just about the opportunity that you saw to change the look between season 1 and season 2.
I think I didn't necessarily have the intention in changing the full look between the seasons, but Ben definitely asked me to up my game up, and he said we have to make this season look better. I was a little scared by that, just because you don't want to, there were loyal fans, and you don't want to just revolutionize the thing. But when I heard that Sony was coming out with the Venice 2, that was very timely. It happened right when when the first cameras became available. It happened right when we were about to start prep. So we locked those in with Panavision, and that was really helpful because it kind of gave us the extra lushness that season 2 has. We tried to work every time we could, using as much of the sensor as possible, and this version of the camera allowed to push that. And our lenses, and also because of our relationship with Panavision, we're able to really customize things to utilize them to their full potential. So there's less depth of field this season in general, and that kind of gave the image a different texture. That was one big change. And then also a lot of the changes actually come from production design and just nuances in that, and expanding the world. So the writing and the production design is a big part of that. And I mean, I tried some things, but I actually felt like they weren't helping. I tried lighting more and doing more shading and contrasting within the lighting, but that didn't turn out to look right anyway. So for me, I'm always looking for a natural realism, and a heightened aesthetic, but that comes from also just the base lighting within some of these sets and working with production design to get the best kind of fixtures. So yeah, I think some of it kind of came from a bunch of different places.
Yeah,
but I should mention.
Yeah.
With I think this season, one of the things that when you mention it's darker, in the grade this season, I feel like we pushed more to go darker. We definitely because things come in a specific way. I tend to shoot always a stop and a half under, even in regular lighting settings, and then pull it up so that it's gritty. Luke Taylor, the DIT that I've been working with for 7 years, he follows that through with all the other cinematographers who work on the show, making sure we're all kind of doing the same technique. This season we had a lot of units, so there was definitely definitely multiple DITs, and sometimes I had to chase through it. But I'll watch in the daily sometimes, and I'll see when something wasn't like underexposed enough, because I feel like it's part of the final texture. But to come back to the grade with Tom Poole this season, we went further in terms of contrast. So it gave it another, like a slightly different feeling than season 1.
Yeah, and I feel like you really got to spread your wings a little bit with the environment and your lighting. I'm thinking of episodes like Woe's Hollow and Sweet Vitriol, and of course, I want to make sure I pronounce this right, Chikhai Bardo. So, but yes, you get to do a lot of other locations, a lot of more location work. It felt like different places we hadn't seen before, and to bring in all of these, sometimes sunny aesthetics, but then also like some really dark and dismal. Can you talk a little bit about getting out of the basement? I know that there was the whole outie world in season 1, but there's a lot more of the world that we see in season 2.
Yeah, that was tricky to navigate from a production standpoint. Shooting an entire episodes like that out in the woods is a lot. We weren't trying to do the least possible in visual effects. There's a couple small things that were done in post, but honestly, the majority of that whole thing was shot outside in the elements. And we had snowstorms, and we had a bunch of stuff happen to us while we were out there. I think, to me, like the key of doing location work in order of making it the lighting that I want, or the mood that like I really want to try and achieve, is having like my hands in the schedule. I'm definitely shuffling things around, even for episode 8 that we shot in Newfoundland. All of that, when we did the production meeting in Newfoundland a couple of days before shooting, we had a meeting and I switched everything around because I was looking at the forecast, and I'm constantly just switching things to make sure that it works. Like, ultimately, my light source is the sun and its nature, so I have to work with that. And the cool thing is that Ben and I are used to working like that. So, before making any change, I always make sure that it works for him. For example, in the episode 4, we have the dream sequence with Irving, which was supposed to be shot at night. I wanted to do like a Japanese nightmare aesthetic thing for that, and when we were supposed to shoot another scene one day, and it was super, super foggy. We were supposed to shoot the cliff scene of them when they find the TV, at the beginning. And we were driving into set and literally talking about like, oh man, like, okay, what are we supposed to do? It's super foggy. We won't have a view. Like, the whole point is to have this like expansive view. And I asked Ben, well, maybe we should shoot the dream sequence. In my dream scenario, shooting this sequence, what I would have wanted is fog. The only risk is like, we're coming in at like 8 or 9 in the morning to start working, on the cliff stuff, and we would have to wait until the end of the day to do it all at blue hour when the sun set, because you still need like the light levels to be low for the computers to give that feeling of lighting. So we had to, and the risk was waiting all day and seeing if the fog would stay, and the fog stayed the entire day. So when we got to like 5 p.m. or 4 p.m. when we were doing that dream sequence, we had all day to prepare for it, and we didn't even have like the right lights for it, because we weren't thinking we were going to need such powerful lights. So the gaffer that day got stuff sent from New York from the city, and everything arrived and all worked out. But it was probably the most stressful moment for me in the entire season, was just waiting to see if the fog would hold.
Well, it's such an ambitious show. There's so much stuff going on, and I kind of want to rush right into talking about episode 7, your directorial debut here, because or your directorial debut for the series. And tell me about that. Tell me what that was like. It's a very different muscle, and at least if you're going to do it well, it's a very different muscle than being a DP. So talk about exercising this other muscle, being the director.
Well, there's a lot of it. It's a complicated question because a lot goes into it. But for me, I had a realization, after getting the opportunity to do it, that this was something that I really deeply wanted, and that I had kind of forgotten. Well, not kind of. I had forgotten that this desire was something true for me, and it was just because I was so afraid of it. To be honest, I think I didn't want to be put in that kind of like vulnerable space. But I realized that on this show, with the crew that knew me, with the cast that knew me, with Ben supporting me and the producers as well, that this opportunity would never come up for me again in my life. Like it couldn't, you know? So that, and seeing just where I was at personally, made me realize that I really needed to just go for it and give it my all. So that kind of charged the whole thing. And the fact that I got to direct on a show where I'm the cinematographer throughout not in every episode, but I'm there for the whole period of the shoot, gave me a lot of space to kind of like ease into this, you know. And there's a lot of like set building in this episode. So, it's not always the case where directors can come in and really participate in building out the world with the production design team and costumes and props. But because I was there, I was able to do that. And I think that's where, I really saw that I wanted this and that I wanted to do this, because I had so much joy like in being involved in these conversations and in that process. But then on this episode, in terms of working with cast, it was the thing that I didn't know if I could do it or not. That's where Ben, I think, was the most supportive and just giving me simple advice and being there like when I needed it. That made it a lot easier for me. I realized that it was just something that you kind of have, and it's not really working with actors and just feeling if the performance is authentic. It's just about being there with them, and kind of letting go of everything else. So yeah, I just kind of dove right in, and I found out that I could do it, and I surprised myself, honestly.
Well, I really want to dig into this because I think this is really interesting. I speak to a lot of DPs who have dabbled in transitioning to being a director, and it takes for some, it doesn't take for others, and I think that it requires approaching what you get very comfortable with about doing your job in a day in, day out, and now a different way, and you're collaborating with someone who typically does the job that you usually do. So tell me a little bit about that. Tell me about the collaboration. I know you were working with some other people with some other units already on the show, but now you've got to move into the director's chair. Talk about the collaboration with another DP.
Well, so on my episode, I worked with another DP for the film unit, but everything else I shot myself.
Are you crazy? That's like it's such a complicated show. So you were like, I'm gonna wear both hats.
I didn't want to originally. I mean, I love wearing a lot of hats, but there's like a limit. And there was the question from people. Oh, no one pushed back on this. I never felt like I got pressured into anything, but there was questioning of, do you want to shoot your own episode, or do you want to hire someone? And at first it was like, you're going to hire someone, right? I tried, but I couldn't get the right person. The other cinematographers who shoot on the show were busy with their own thing. And to be honest, because my prep for my episode was so spread out in like little parts here and there, like, oh, we'll do a meeting here while you're like shooting episode 8 or whatever, and then another meeting here while you're doing 10. I couldn't like have my we couldn't hire a cinematographer that would be doing all of these meetings, and it wouldn't interest anyone to be that person. So I didn't end up finding anyone, but the film part of it was concentrated and focused. And I asked Tom Poole, our colorist, like, who do you know, or do you know anyone who would do this? Who could be good at this? And he suggested Max Goldman, and we had a great collaboration for that. But what was interesting was to compare collaborating with myself and collaborating with someone else. And also, with Max, it was the first time I was working with another cinematographer. I think it wasn't like super easy for me to transition. Because it was within the world of Severance. I think now I'm working on my first feature and I'm excited to work with another cinematographer. I feel like I have so much respect for that craft. After being in it for 15 years, I know what goes into it. I know how you have to be such a giving person to do that. And I really do love it so much. And I believe that there are specific cinematographers that are perfect for every movie. So I'm excited about that. But then on this, because I kind of created the look of it, that was harder. And then working with myself was weird. I realized on set that everything was going so fast. There was no pausing. I literally, we would rehearse, and I would be no context, nothing on me, no headset, and watch the actors, work with them, get it to where we needed to get it. Then there was a pause of like a second. I would put my headset on, which is like my DP headset, which is what I talk to operators, grips, and electrics on, and the DIT. We all work with headsets a lot on Severance because of how much multi-camera work we do and just how our sets are built. It's the only way to talk to people, and I don't like screaming on set. So I would put that headset on and I would switch into Cinematographer and just say, okay, we're doing this, and this, and breaking it down. But then I realized once everyone got to work, I didn't have the time where a cinematographer and a director talk to each other. There's this beautiful conversation moment that like Ben and I will have after each rehearsal where I'll go to him and we'll talk about, okay, what do you need? Where is this going? And we talk through the shots that he wants and any other ideas that come up. And I help him plan out like how we're going to attack it from a practical point of view. But like, I didn't get that. And that made me feel kind of panic because I realized that things were moving so fast and there was no validation of anyone saying that's a good idea. Yes, you're covered. Don't worry about that. Cause like I'll challenge Ben, and we'll like make sure that, we can talk about it every time and just feel we both feel good about it. Okay, move on. And that's kind of nice for a director to have that with a DP. And I started doing it with my script supervisor. So I would go to her and she would always have my overheads in all my shots, but I would just be like, okay, was this good? Do you think and she would bring up something if I miss it, but I'm a pretty prepared person, so it was not too bad. But that dialogue, and what it was even more useful with her is like she's very sensitive to performance, and I leaned on her in terms of just having that safety, having that voice of someone else saying you're good.
Yeah. That validation or challenging is so important. And now, I mean, quite often I would witness this on set happening between the DP and the director, even after, director having conversations with the talent, with the actors, and almost like a sounding board, almost like this is kind of what I'm thinking. Did you find yourself being almost crippled, that you had to split your brain another into another part here to have the actor conversation, the blocking conversation, the script supervisor conversation? It seems like so much more internal pressure to have to figure it out.
When I had to really decide and let go of hiring another DP on the show, the thing that I realized is because I've worked with other cinematographers for Severance and for other shows in the past, I know what goes into working with them. And when most of the time, these DPs, they want you to be happy. They want Ben and I to be like, this is Severance. You're doing Severance. It looks like the show. You're good. So I also knew that if I hired someone else, they would be coming up to me and be like, is this okay? Is this okay? And I couldn't stand that idea. I was like, oh, no. I can't be constantly having to deal with making sure someone feels that they're doing the right look. So it was easier not to move through that. And also the crew, I knew them so well and they knew me so well. And we had established the language and we do a lot of pre-lighting. For example, that Christmas scene, which is some of my favorite lighting of the entire show, we pre-lit that, So we already had the intentions and had time to discuss. That DP conversation was done already. So yeah, and I work like that as a DP in general. We're always talking about things like these lighting looks that you see in episode 10 and when we're doing crazy stuff with the LED things. That's months of work. It doesn't just it's not 2 days before we're figuring how to light these hallways. It's a lot of testing and work.
Of course.
So yeah, all of that kind of loaded it up, but the headsets helped me. Taking my Comtex off and putting my other headset on was the way of telling my brain, you're a DP, you're a director, you're a DP, you're a director. And then I just would tell everyone, have my back, if there's something wrong, tell me.
You had your own severancing going on there between DP and director. You had your own split by putting on the different headsets. It's, look, well, tell me about, so you already had this great rapport with the cast. Talk about now giving the cast direction, because this is a fundamental part of being a director that the DP doesn't usually do. So tell me more about working with your first team.
That was probably the best part of this whole experience. Just seeing that they were also there for me, because I was quite nervous about going into that, but they really welcomed me with open arms. I got to work a lot with Deechin in advance. We had a lot of conversations about each room, each character, each version of the character that she was playing, and that was fun. We were defining what's the story in the dentist room, like how many times has she been in here versus the Christmas room. Why is she this personality in there? And to me, it was important to differentiate each room, that she would have just a different personality in each of them because her experience would have been different in them. And then talking just about like what it would have been like to be imprisoned. And a lot of work went into just thinking how to deal with that, because like the pain that this character goes through is absolutely insane and just hard to even imagine. And her old self, or like the flashback Gemma, the flashback Gemma was, for me, where I connected with her the most, because there was a lot of personal things I could connect to in that story. And also just being a woman who's kind of struggled being in partnerships, dealing with just my career and what I do, and not having, not always finding a partner that accepts that or understands that or knows how to just deal with that, was a lot. And then a lot of the other things as well were very close to me. So it made that easier. We just had genuine conversations, and being able to bring both Adam and her to the house where I was living, which is where we ended up shooting. I was living in that house for about 2 years. The 2 years that we made season 2. And at the end, they came over for a weekend. Ben was there. Mark Friedman, the writer on Seven, was there. And we just, moved through the scenes in a casual way without too much pressure. And those casual kind of conversations led to bigger conversations, and we were able to work through it as a team. So for me, that was like a safe space, and it was easy to then, on the day when everyone's around, like we already know the essence of the scene, and we're just kind of making sure that it comes out through each take and each performance.
It's so impressive. It's really impressive to pull off shooting a show, pull off directing a show, to do those two things together. I don't know how many of our listeners really understand like just how difficult it is, what it is you set out to do. And what an incredible episode. Episode 7, I would say, with maybe the exception of the finale of episode 10, there's so much stuff going on. There's so many different looks. There is an incredible series of transitions that take place in that. Like it is visually incredible, besides being just a fantastic episode. Like I think from like the very beginning of like you've got Mark and Gemma meeting for the first time, donating blood, and then there's this incredible shot transition to the testing floor of Gemma's character now having blood drawn down there. And this is just one of probably like 5 or 6 sort of incredible abilities. Like that episode tells a story through multiple timelines simultaneously, and you're never confused about where you are in any of those transitions. And they're beautiful to watch. I think possibly my favorite one might be the simplest, which is this very unusual polygonical shaped room, which is like the room of like a clinic. And then it immediately cuts to the same shape room, which is on the testing floor. And it's a different time. It's a different place. Can you talk a little bit about these transitions? Talk about a little bit like crafting the visual style of this episode, because it's really incredible.
It was a funny story to just go with that specific transition that I've never really spoken about. But, there's some things you kind of like don't want to talk about, because you want, ultimately when you make something, and this is Ben that had brought this up to me, and it really actually like helped me like digest this thing coming out into the world, because I struggled before it was released, just kind of freaking out that people wouldn't like it. But when you make something, and especially something original that's a little bit out there, you do have to just let go of it so that people can interpret it how they need to and how they want to, because it will belong to them at that point. And then when you over-explain something, I think you can ruin the visions that other people have. But what's important is that everyone watches something through their own lens. Like that's what makes it special, because then you can have an authentic connection with the material. But all of these transitions came from Mark Friedman and I kind of collaborating together. Originally, he had all of these ideas for flashbacks, and he knew that I'm a very technical person, and I'm driving a lot of the innovation in terms of the transitions on the show. So he was like, "Look, I'm not a camera person, but I want this to feel like a whirlwind." And he showed me the scenes, and then basically I was like, "Well, let me take a stab at it," and I would intuitively just like look at the scenes and see what would work together. There was a desire to try and keep it linear at one point, in time. At one point, we kind of let go of that. Because you can't, anyways. To me, like the most beautiful lesson of all of this is that time is not truly linear. That's my belief on it, anyways. But I would look at each scene and just see what would come up in terms of ideas. Even the shower transition came when I was actually taking a shower in that shower.
And that's an incredible shot too. That's it. I mean, you bring it up so casually, but if I recall correctly, isn't it like there's like water, there's like shower rain running in reverse. It's like, it's like there's like backwards, and it's so subtle, but it's not subtle at all. If you're paying attention, you see it. So
Adam had to act backwards for that shot. We were in MDR. We made a shower rig in MDR. Basically, we were in really close. And for me, the original idea was like, well, I can get in close enough on him there and have the green divider be in the back, and then we'll put a green towel in the bathroom. And like I was like, okay, well that will work, because then I can just pull out. And so he's basically playing the MDR moment before the shower, and then the rain goes on, and then we'd have it in reverse, so he becomes dry. That was the whole thing. Trying to explain to him, so okay, she's having a miscarriage, and then you're in MDR with Miss Casey. It's absurd, the conversations you have. But to get back to that original one you're talking about, that's your favorite, the reason that played out that way is we were trying not to add extra costs. So I had the idea of, why don't we just build the doctor's office inside Gemma's office? So we reused the set, and that's where that came from. And also just like you don't know if there's like, if some of these things are in a dream state, if they're in reality. So you can imagine these like worlds collapsing, and like the whole sequence in the hallway, that's like it's a hyperlapse, time lapse. That to me is how some of my dreams are. When I travel, you go in these places and just like environments collapse around you and morph around you. It's a very dreamlike thing, but we're in the subconscious, and in the subconscious is where sometimes, if you go deep enough, you go into like a greater consciousness place where we all are. So like you're interlacing her and him in this whole place, like in this space. I don't want to call this space, just collective unconscious. Exactly collective what it unconscious.
Is. Yeah. No, I get it. It's so much fun. This episode, I really love this episode because we get to have backstory. We get to see stuff that we never saw before. I'm curious, did episode 7 come up in the shoot schedule chronologically? So really had your actors been acting together, and then it was like kind of like revealed to them in order, or did you get to do this a little bit earlier in the season? How did episode 7 kind of fit in that? Because I feel like it would have been so helpful for the talent to be able to know and to have experience sort of like that relationship.
Originally, we were wondering, like, is that the better thing, to shoot the past first? And ultimately, what the feeling and experience I wanted us to have on set was a different one than what we usually do. And the only way to do that was if we put it at the end. Because we could do a smaller crew. We could, we were going with it was a new camera crew. And a lot of people changed at that moment. And we could do something like very put together with a different approach and a different feel. Also, we wanted to cut Adam's hair. So that was... and we wanted to do it for real, and not have him wear a wig. So that pushed it to be to the end. But the rest of it was shot kind of... Episode 7 was, because I was always available, in the sense I'm there, I'm shooting all of Ben's work. So they could kind of like put it in different places. And to me, that was great because I got to have space between my first time directing. So the first stuff that was shot was everything in Mark's house. So we, like day 2, we were shooting the end of the episode. I am zero bothered by shooting things out of order now, because I think I was so afraid of not doing a good job that I knew the hell out of the script and about everything happening. So for me, it didn't faze me. But we started with those first, and then we went into the testing floor sequences. But having breaks helped me, because I could, edit a little bit, take it in, just deal with living through my nerves of doing this. It was kind of a blessing.
Yeah. Wow. Let's talk a little bit about the film unit, because you play with speed. It's like, you talked about the hyperlapse before too, but it seems like there's all different sorts of like looks that kind of come together inside of this. Can you talk about the sort of spice, sort of looks like old 8mm, 16mm sort of footage?
That you're talking about, like, specifically the time-lapse sequence, which wasn't scripted originally, but I had a huge fear of only having like 14 scenes with them, that in the past that we wouldn't get enough of their life. The scenes had like a certain amount of weight, just because they had to give the backbone for episode 10 and for like the big dramatic reveal of the show. So a lot of the scenes we had to like move the story around that, and there was just no more scenes of them being happy or just like living life. Everything was so heavy. I knew the challenge of doing a time lapse is that I would never get the time on set to shoot that amount of material. So we really diligently planned it. But I got a Bolex from the gaffer on the show, Kurt Lenning, and he gave that to me for, I don't know, probably like a month or two, no, a couple months actually, because it went over from winter to spring. And I lived in the house, so I did a lot of time lapses, sometimes on flowers, like light moving on flowers. Sometimes it was deer outside or the moon and the snow melting, so that you would feel in this time lapse, time move. And we tried to, then we did some of the time lapse stuff we were able to shoot within our unit, like the flower watering sequence, and then the fade in of when you see them at the dinner scene and they fade in, that's a real in-camera effect. There's no VFX. Well, it's not. That's not on the Bolex. That's actually on a 435 for doing the time lapse. But the Bolex stuff is the stuff that's Super 16, and everything else is 35. But that is built into, like, we rewound the film and then shot over it. Visual effects was like, what is that? They're like, how does that even? They didn't understand that it was like baked in. Yeah, very, very old school. But and then Ben, actually, when we were shooting the last week at the house, he came over and I had to ask him, like, Ben, I need help. I need you to get me some extra, because I had no time to do it. I'm like, can you just get me extra footage with them? Just go out and shoot. So he shot little stolen moments with Deechin and Adam outside, which made the cut.
It's a really effective way to tell a story. It's a really wonderful to have these spices and these different pieces that all kind of fit into the amazing stew that is episode 7. I want to talk though also a bit about the season finale, because the season finale, I think, is one of the best season finales that I can think of in recent history from any season 2 of any show, and. There's a lot going on. There's a lot going on in the season finale, and then there's a ton of color and color work, where ordinarily this show does not necessarily have a ton of saturation, but the saturation comes in really, really big. And the sort of final sequence running through the hallways at the very, very end, it has this, I want to say almost like 1970s slow motion running to camera, sort of like, really dramatic. Look, if someone hasn't seen this yet, I'm not concerned. They've had plenty of opportunities. I'm not worried about giving it away, but you tell me about, like, okay, so you've done your directorial debut for the series. Now you're fully immersed back in DP hat on again. You've got to wrap up this season. I know it's not the maybe very last thing you did, because you got to cut Adam's hair, but talk about moving back into this big finale, which is going to be the penultimate episode of the show.
Well, it's not like I lived it like as in moving back to it, because everything is happening all at once on this kind of work, especially how Severance is shot. So I'm prepping for 7 and I'm shooting 10. I'm coming down. I was living on the 3rd floor of this house to be able to let the production design team come in, and I would walk downstairs and just make comments on the set and then walk out and go and shoot episode 10 in that day. So there was no separation. It was happening at the same time. But so much prep went into it, specifically those looks that we were talking about, those lighting designs. Kevin, our dimmer board op, did incredible work to design some of this stuff. And we do it in phases. Well, first of all, the gaffer and I work directly with Kevin in terms of just talking about the needs that we have for different sequences. There's a red emergency lighting look for the testing floor, and then for the severed floor. And then there's the red look for MDR. And then there's the band music look, which has 2 different songs. So we're going to do 2 different looks. And there's them coming in, and every single light has to be programmed. It's not like, you're pressing a button and it's like some AI thing creating this for you. Maybe now, but like not back then. So that takes months of work, and we have to schedule time in to do it, which is also challenging because we're constantly shooting. Sometimes we'll just have a camera crew come in for the day so that we can put it in a corner of MDR, have Kevin press the buttons for that his look goes on, and then we can see it later because we don't have time. So that's really, really laborious. But I absolutely love the looks that we found for the hallways. That, when you see that like really long hallway and you have that red just like kind of strobing through it, I think it's absolutely gorgeous. I'm really happy with what we got in the end. And there's something so unique and beautiful to mention about that final shot that I had not seen coming. And I don't know that Ben had seen this either, because we never had this conversation, but red is a color that we don't use in the show in general. Like, it makes sense in terms of an emergency lighting situation, but then it kind of like snuck its way in a couple times this season, and especially in episode 7. And you can kind of, and it comes in also with the Chinese restaurant where Helly and Mark are in 6. So you have this like weird association with like love, passion, intensity with the color red. And then in this final shot, we like land in this deep red moment with them that was put onto film, transferred onto film in the end and rescanned to give it like an actual authentic feel. And what I think is the most interesting is that episode 7, we shot these moments of his life where he was open to love and open to like living life fully on film. So ironically, the end of 10 is on film again. So I see it as like the transition of Mark following that love instinct within him and opening back up that set of emotions and humanness within him.
Yeah, it's a really lovely and dramatic way to wrap out the season. But I think about there's so many different looks and ambitious set pieces that happen, including stuff that might seem relatively simple, like I'm thinking of the birthing cabin that starts at the very beginning. But the birthing cabin is this wonderful, low key, like you just see Mrs. Cobell, lurking in the darkness with like tiny little eye lights, and there's this wonderful sort of back and forth. You're mixing the mediums of shooting on the the mini DV camera and back and forth. Can you talk a little bit about that? Sort of the entry into this final episode, because Mark's now getting to have a conversation with himself, something that hasn't happened before in the show, and it's so tightly and nicely kind of put together. Can you talk a little bit about the cabin sequence? Well,
the cabin sequence was shot on stage, and it was beautiful build. It's actually built kind of an inspiration from the original cabin. Like, there is a cabin that looks like that and has that interior. I personally love shooting on location when we can, but that space was just, it's similar to what you see in the show. Like, it's on the edge of a lake. You can imagine the road to get there is impossible. Season 1, we did shoot the scene work there, but it was a lot easier. So That was, I mean, it was a challenge, but it was fun to do these kinds of sequences where everything's blue screen outside and you have to like fully create this environment. But, you know, we work with an amazing visual effects team that really crushed it. And they did an amazing job on this sequence. I think what's fun is the contrast between the inside lighting and the outside lighting, you know, like the blue and the warm inside. So that's pretty interesting. But, you know, it was about performance and really giving Adam the space that he needed to in that. I think what I find also the most interesting is that it's quite simple, you know, and it leaves space for that. It's basically a shot counter shot between him, Innie, and Audi, you know, left frame, right frame, and you're just following the eye lines, making sure it feels like two people are actually talking to each other. But the logistics about shooting it, you know, you have some zollies and stuff like that. It just wasn't that complicated in my mind. I think it was more just giving space for performance and figuring all of that out.
As you do, it's really effective scene. It really brings you into that whole episode, which is kind of feels like a roller coaster. Now, going back a little bit into previous conversation when we spoke years ago, you mentioned about how little CG that you wanted to do in this show, like how little, like how much in camera. In your episode 7, there is a shot that is another one of these incredible transitions where the camera sort of flips up to the ceiling, flips up to the light, and then kind of falls down through, I don't know, it looks like a practical, inside of some sort of console with cables and all this stuff, and then comes out near Mark's feet in this like really convoluted, like I have no idea how you guys pulled it off, but I know that you don't like to use CG, but my initial thought was this must be CG. Can you talk about a little bit about this trick shot? I feel like this might be the most trick shot that I've seen you guys do so far.
Yeah, I mean, we were definitely reaching in terms of what we do on the show. I think season 1, we pushed really hard not to do too much visual effects, but season 2, there's a lot more in it. There's a lot more cleanup and a lot more, snow work and things like that. And just like cleaning and making everything like super slick. So you shoot like a base on set and then you beautify it with visual effects. but then it allows you to have like the real authentic thing there to always like ground yourself in. For this shot, what was really important is that we didn't want to create the elements in post. So it's 4 different shots that are stitched together, but the stitches are very simple. They just kind of like flow one into the other. And then there's like a tiny bit of CG, which is the grate. When you come out of the cable and you pull out, we only had like half the grate there. So that they had to enhance. And then there's like cleanup and stuff like that in different places. But getting a camera through cables is one of the most challenging things I've ever done. So there was we used like an actual inside of an MVR desk that we had created for episode 4. We had an extra one, so we hung that in a stage somewhere, and the set deck team designed this cable aesthetic within it that was longer and came out. So we actually even had to have fiber optic cables so that they would light, because there was no way to like light this without the cables being the lighting. So as we pull out, we're using a probe lens for that part of the shot. We're pulling through it, and we had these big rings around the camera. Some of them were like a couple feet wide, and then there were smaller ones, so collars, that would move and turn as this thing was on a pulley, so it was being pulled. And the camera was basically moving down, like they were just moving together, and the cables were being wrapped around the lens, so that it would, close in on the lens.
Oh, wow.
The final part of it, we needed the art department to help us build a new column piece with the cables inside of it, because the original set didn't have the cables built into, they're not supposed to see them. But the camera was booming down along with the same probe lens, but with a prism so that it would be able to get low to the floor. Booming down these cables coming through that grate area, and then there was a trap door that the art department built that we could close the column out with, so that we wouldn't miss like the rest of it coming out. And then we wrap around the feet. When you got to the feet on this like prism probe lens, the back of the column had to be cleaned up a little bit because it wasn't like the full column. But the idea of that whole shot was I wanted to do a Honey, I Shrunk the Kid shot. And originally we talked about building a ginormous set. Like we even made the shoe as a test, but it was so expensive. It was one, they were like, no, you're not doing this. And I was like, well, the only other way to give that feeling is with the probe lens. And I think it really paid off, but it has a different texture and feel. And it just enhances that feeling of how small they are in this like big, it's like this big corporate institution.
It's really a wonderful shot, and it's so unexpected because there's so many things going on in this episode, and it's just it doesn't it fits in with the entire world, but it's not like other stuff that we see all the time. There's I'm thinking of other shots of like up high pushing through like computer monitors and stuff, which we've seen before, but this one in particular, it's like it's very unique, very original, and it seems like it must have sprung from your mind, because it does. I don't know anyone else who's coming up with like the amount of flow of kind of through all of that. Can you talk a little bit about just where that comes from? I assume that's not in the script. I assume that is something that you're like, we need to get from point A to point B, and what's the coolest way we can do this?
I mean, I don't know how I do it. It just like ideas just come. The thing that let this kind of stuff happen the way that it does is just the way we shoot this show and the time that we give it, you know? And because I was there since the beginning, I was able to be involved in that part of the writing where we're thinking up of these transitions, and also prepping work like this. You know, you can't come in with just a couple weeks of work as a director and make this happen. Like, you need to, like, we do a lot of side projects. Also, there was, like I mentioned, you know, not wanting to go over budget on certain things and not wanting to go to another location to do the doctor's office. Well, we're thinking of solutions to make it possible, especially because it's a middle episode, you know, it's not like it doesn't want to have like the extra days of shooting and things like that. So you have to be really smart. But because I'm there all the time, I'm able to make things work for me and for this episode. So that's a huge advantage that I have in terms of pushing that kind of language. But the ideas, I don't know. I took a lot of walks just to have, I do that. I'll listen to music and walk and just see what comes up. But for me, it's weirdly natural. They just kind of come, and it's like, because I have so much experience as a cinematographer, that helps me already figure out how to do it. I usually will not think of an idea if I don't know how to do it already. For example, the couch thing, to me, that was like, when I go into my subconscious or do subconscious work, I will usually lay down and go into a specific type of state, and the feeling that I feel when I go into my subconscious is this like falling kind of feeling, falling back, going deeper and deeper. And I wanted to express that because I wanted it to feel like we were going into his subconscious. So I knew the couch was the same color as Adam's eyes. So that's what triggered me. I mean, I know the exact color of Adam's eyes because I've done close-ups on them. But I was like, oh, the couch is the same color as his eyes. So there's a connection there. And I'm like, well, the couch can become his eye. I don't know. It's just like, that's how they happen.
Yeah, no, I get it. You know, who's to say where the ideas come from? Okay, I got to ask you, though, directing more in season 3 for you? Is that going to be a thing? Is there conversations happening about that? I don't know. Are you looking to put that hat back on again? Yeah.
I think it's way too early to have those conversations. Severance is Severance. But I am working on my first feature right now, so that's happening.
All right. Well, that's really exciting. What genre does your feature debut come in? Is it?
It's dark. It's darker than Severance. It's a 90s erotic thriller. That's the vibe.
Oh, wow. All right. So let me ask this. Very hypothetical. I'm not asking for any spoilers for anything, but if you were going back to Severance, what in the world would you most like to experiment in? What direction is left to go visually? I know it's a tough question. It's hypothetical.
I think for me, it's more of a production design expansion of other floors and other things like that. That would be like the thing that would excite me the most, probably. Just like more of the world of Lumon. Every time you have a new set, it's like you're like a kid in a candy shop on that show, you know?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that, choreography and merriment was such a left field a moment for everyone who watched the finale. And holy crap, it's like every time, that this onion gets peeled, there's one more layer that, no one ever expected. The goats, there's so many things. I think you're right. I think that the more that we get to see about this, fictitious mega corporation is fascinating. All right. Speaking more about the transitions of episode 7, there's this hyperlapse sequence. You mentioned it briefly before. Tell me a little bit about how that came to be and what you guys did. Was it a in-camera Rialto kind of thing, or what was? How did you pull it off?
Well, it was shot on the Venice. I'm trying to remember if they might have been Rialto. I think they had to be because of some of the types of shots we were doing. But it came from originally just the idea of wanting to create this nightmare escape of Gemma, like this world where she's in the darkest parts of herself and kind of where memories can be stored. And then she finds this lighter memory at the end where we kind of transition into Mark's world. I had seen a hyperlapse example shot on Bolex of Montreal, like moving through Montreal architecture in the wintertime that I thought was stunning. And I remember showing this to the operator being like, I want to do this in the hallways, like just show us traveling through time and space. Because a time lapse will travel us through time, but then this hyperlapse travels us through time and space, which I think is really interesting. But the challenge of these sequences, they took days to shoot, just that one specific sequence once we leave her out of that room. So there's a poor operator and AC team that were stuck alone, pulled away from set to do that on their own in the hallways. And the dimmer board op who was like, there with them having to like turn on each individual light. That took an enormous amount of time. It was a struggle to get to the end. I remember we were wrapping and I ran over to that set where Scott was doing like the final piece of it. And it was literally like we had to wrap and they were finishing the last couple shots.
It's super effective and it's very, very cool. One of the things, and we talked about this a little bit when we talked about season 1, I can't help but thinking, because you've got these complicated board setups and lights built into these scenes and into these floors, into these spaces. Are you ever augmenting? And do you what's the way that you augment and you bring into some of this stuff? Are you a big bounce light person? Are you big into reflectors? I'm trying to. Some people's work I feel like is really easy to reverse engineer in my brain how they probably went about doing it. I have a really hard time with yours. I feel like there must be a lot of negative fill, but I don't know. And you don't have to do a detailed breakdown of your secret sauce here. But what's the way you augment on people? I think it's really interesting.
I don't think I have a secret sauce, but I don't think it's a secret. I work with production design. I am very much involved in building the sets. I sneak in stuff everywhere within it. I choose the fixtures and the quality of them, and I knew, designing the whole testing floor with Jeremy, I knew I wanted those follow lights because I wanted to do this sequence. So I said, well, we need to design something where that we can do, the lights to follow her, because that's like how that thing will pay off. And in her suite, I knew I wanted a night look and a day look. And so we snuck things in everywhere. So that layering process is done way before we shoot, because on set, I don't like to bring in units. We'll do it a little bit. We have this like one sock thing that we just bring for beauty lighting, but I don't like, I won't be bringing in a lot of sources. It's really rare. I kind of actually have like a bit of a trigger when I see something come in the set. And I don't like to bounce sources. I do mostly direct light, or if it's bounced, it has to be like, I know that, she's sitting in this chair in this like mini doctor's office in her suite. We'll have that light on the side that will enhance, to just give her something soft towards her. But I don't like to just bring in something to create bounce. Like for me, that breaks the realism of lighting. But the opportunity to work with production design and bake it into the set is what I like to do the most.
Jessica Lee Gagné, this has been a fantastic conversation, and we dove into so much territory here of your work and your cinematography and your directing of Severance Season 2. Thank you so much for being on the show. Again, where can people find you? Do you still do the Instagram? If people wanted to follow you, are you out there doing that?
I am on Instagram, but I'm not really good at posting. I don't do it often, but I am on there. That's the only social media I have.
What's your handle? We'll share it over at our show notes over at camnoir.com.
It's Jessica Lee Gagné, but no accent on the E. That's it, yeah.
Well, Jessica, this has been such a delight. I really can't wait to see what you guys do next. And I'm very much looking forward to hearing about your feature directorial debut. That's very exciting.
Oh, well, thanks for having me. It's been a pleasure.
So that was Jessica Lee Gagné. Jessica, thank you so much for coming back on the show. That was a phenomenally great interview. I really appreciated talking about all the different aspects of Severance Season 2. And I can't wait for Severance Season 3. Very, very exciting. So, okay, Kays, you'll never guess what time it is.
I have a pretty good guess that it's time to pay some bills.
You're absolutely right. It is time to pay the bills. We got to thank our fine friends over at Arri, makers of all kinds of incredible cameras and lenses and lights. But I want to talk about something today that they don't actually get a ton of attention for. I mean, people know about it, but it tends to be a little bit more overlooked, and that is their impression filters. Impression filters are filters that attach to the rear of either the signature primes or the signature zooms, and they're extremely cool. There is a variety of different looks that you can create with them, and they kind of go in one direction or the other direction, so you can create these different looks. They are compatible with basically anything that says signature on it, including even the extenders, and it creates a more vintage or more ethereal, different sorts of looks out of the same very controlled and beautiful lenses. I was actually just watching something recently on one of the popular Facebook cinematography groups, and they were asking a poll for people to rank their favorite lenses of all times, and signature primes, signature series and stuff were at the top of this poll, however long we had gone into it, which I thought was actually really telling because they are truly amazing lenses. But one of the coolest features that I don't hear people talk about nearly as much as they should is the Impression V filters, which are options and kind of allow actually any rental house out there to really customize the look. People talk a lot about, very premier level rental houses getting deep inside of lenses and tweaking them to change them. But Arri has essentially given anyone who owns a set of these lenses the ability to completely change the look. So that I think it's really awesome. If you're not familiar with Arri Impression V filters, of course, they're available over at Hot Rod Cameras, and there's a ton of information over at the Arri.com site, and we will put a link to that over at the show notes at Cam Noir. But it is time for us to talk about our short end, our pet obsession of the week.
And now, short ends.
Kays, what do you have going on? Do you have a pet obsession, something that you're all about this week?
The obsession that I have this week is the fact that I'm very excited about this really odd show that's playing on HBO Max called The Rehearsal. The Rehearsal is a show that is very, very difficult to describe to somebody who's never seen it. And basically, they had like a season one, I think like about a year ago. And now they just released the new episodes for season 2. And this is why I'm very, very excited to talk about it. Mm. So The Rehearsal is hosted by a comedian by the name of Nathan Fielder. And the idea behind it is that, let's say that you need to have a conversation with a coworker or maybe a significant other or some other kind of like difficult situation that you're finding yourself in having to confront. Nathan will come in and basically recreate in the most minute detail all of the elements of this conversation that you're about to have so that you can rehearse it and prepare yourself before actually having it for real. And it's just like this bizarre concept that is incredibly fascinating. And just to give you a quick example, for the season 2, the first episode launches with Nathan Fielder having a conversation discussing how he analyzed a bunch of black box recordings from like airplanes that had terrible crashes, to realize that in many cases the co-pilot was not assertive enough to correct the captain when he felt that the captain was making a mistake, which ultimately resulted in a crash. So he sets out to recreate an airport and an airplane cockpit, and he gets this co-pilot and tries to kind of get him to be more assertive in the cockpit, except that the way he does so is by getting him to be assertive with his girlfriend, that he's having like some, like somewhat of a relationship kind of issues. And basically he makes the girlfriend the pilot and forces him to have this really awkward conversation about their relationship in the cockpit in a flight simulator sort of thing. It's crazy. And all I can say is that you just have to watch it to really get it. And it's one of the best shows on TV. And I just love that the new season just started, and I can't wait to see what else they unleash.
I think it's been going for like 3 or 4 seasons now. So this sounds like it's really sort of like upping the stakes once again.
Yeah, this is actually the second season. Nathan Fielder had another show before this, which was right. Also really bizarre.
Yes,
that's correct.
I saw correct. That show. Yeah,
I think it's like his comedy borders to me on performance art, and because of that, I'm always like telling people like, you got to watch the show. It will catch you by surprise, and to connect. I haven't seen the second episode of the second season quite yet, but I know that it connects to Paramount Plus that we were talking about earlier, just because of the fact that apparently Paramount Plus took one episode of Nathan For You and stopped streaming it because they felt that it was controversial and had this somewhat of an anti-Semitic sort of content. That's not to say that Nathan Fielder himself is anti-Semitic. I believe he's Jewish. But nonetheless, they felt that they wanted to take this particular episode away from the available episodes that are on streaming. And because of that, in the second episode of this season of The Rehearsal, Nathan confronts Paramount about it. And I can't wait to see how he does it.
Okay, so it sounds like I should get caught up with The Rehearsal.
Yes, absolutely. I highly recommend it to you and to anyone listening. And now, Ilya, I'm very curious about what your short end is this week.
My short end is a new movie from the studio known as A24. A24, of course, famous for original productions. Much fewer sequels than, in fact, I can't think of any of their movies having sequels right now, but I think that's going to change because Everything Everywhere, I believe, is getting a sequel. And they've got a new film coming out from writer and director Benny Safdie, who of course is, Uncut Gems, but he's also an actor and a writer. He's done a ton of stuff over the years, and it stars Dwayne Johnson and Emily Blunt. And Dwayne Johnson and Emily Blunt, I would say they look almost entirely unrecognizable in this new trailer for the movie called The Smashing Machine. And The Smashing Machine is a biopic of a legendary mixed martial artist and UFC fighter named Mark Kerr. And it kind of looks like, and this is, I'm just going from the trailer, it kind of looks like the dramatic role that we all knew that like Dwayne Johnson could probably deliver if he was given a movie where that was really like he had the ability to exercise those chops. And on this movie looks like it looks pretty incredible. And I would encourage everyone to go watch the trailer of it because, UFC is this weird dichotomy and all of mixed martial arts really is. And it feels to me like this movie really sort of plays on that and plays on the idea of like, in one scene in the trailer, like, Dwayne Johnson playing Mark Kerr says to a kid, like, don't get in fights, as he's like literally he's the most famous person at the time in mixed martial arts for, professional fighting and having all this stuff. So there's this interesting level of stuff going on. And I will tell you that I'm not necessarily all about like boxing movies or fighting movies or whatever it might be, but I'm interested in movies where there are expectations that are not being met, because I feel like this movie could so easily have been a very, very different movie if it wasn't A24, if it wasn't Benny Safdie, if it wasn't like the people who were behind it. This could be a train wreck. And I know I haven't seen it. I don't know. Maybe it will be, but I'm very excited about where this could go, because if I know anything from seeing Benny Safdie's other work, that this is going to evoke emotion. This is going to be trying to evoke empathy. It's going to be trying to, put people in situations where, you're going to be questioning and wondering, what decisions were being made and why. And I'm really excited about that. There are, love or hate movies like Uncut Gems. They definitely make you think. They definitely take you on down a rabbit hole. They definitely give you an experience. And A24 has sort of an incredible lineup of other movies going on, like in 2025. And so this seems to be like just the first one of a whole bunch that are coming out. They've got a new Spike Lee coming out, which is a reimagining of an Akira Kurosawa movie. I mean, things are not going to be boring from A24. I wish more studios were doing stuff like they are.
Right, absolutely. I mean, this sounds a lot. It reminds me a little bit of when The Wrestler came out, and Mickey Rourke all of a sudden has taken on this role that is almost unrecognizable, and also it's about wrestling, but it's really not about wrestling. So I wonder if this movie is going to be a little bit like that. And it's about fighting, but it's not really about fighting.
Yeah, I think that there is definitely going to be some parallels drawn to The Wrestler, which I thought was a great movie. So yeah, it's kind of exciting. So I think that just about does it for this week, Kays. Kays, where can people find you if they want to find you outside of this podcast?
If they want to find me outside of the podcast, one of the easiest places to go to musicbykays.com, which is the website that I've had for a long time. However, I'm going to do a quick plug for another thing that I'm doing is I've gotten myself involved into the world of repairing vintage synthesizers. You can see like quite a few behind me right now.
Okay.
And I launched a YouTube channel called Kays Labs. So if you go on YouTube and you do a search for Kays Labs, you're going to see me talking about fixing old synths and bringing them back to life.
Wow, that's super cool. I had no idea you were doing that. Are you doing the sort of all-in-one synths that like I can see there that are a keyboard, or are you doing the modular type of ones too with like patch bays and all of that? Or do you not discriminate? Will you fix anything?
I don't discriminate, but so far I've been, I've been going on Craigslist, finding broken old synths that nobody wants or that are selling for relatively, less money than they would if they were working. Open them up and see what I can do. And sure enough, like 9 times out of 10, I can fix it. So that's what I've been doing and documenting, and it's kind of fun. It's my little guilty pleasure right now.
Well, that's super awesome. You can find me over at Hot Rod Cameras, hotrodcameras.com. Yeah, that's I'd say 90% of where people can find me if you want to track me down. Also, occasionally on LinkedIn, I seem to get some messages on LinkedIn and Instagram. So, Kays, we got to thank some people to make this show possible. So I think we should start with you, since you're sitting right here. Thank you, Kays, for the music. All the music that you heard on this podcast today was composed by Kays Alatrachi. Thank you very much. We have to thank our producer, Alana Cody, who is lining up a ton of interviews right now and keeping us super busy. We also have to thank Charlie Nix, editor of this podcast. He is slicing and dicing and making sure that we don't sound totally unintelligible and that all of our sentences aren't out of order, because most people don't know that I usually talk like Yoda, and that really it's only because of Charlie Nix that it ends up being a sort of a normal method. Anyway,
thank you everyone for listening and watching the show, and I'll see you on the next one.
This has been the Cinematography Podcast, presented by Hot Rod Cameras. Find your next camera, lens, or accessory on the web at hotrodcameras.com. Don't forget to subscribe to our show on iTunes and connect with us on Facebook and Twitter. Thanks for listening.